Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. It's me, Nurse Erica, along with my co-host, Nurse Jessica Seitz, and we have a special episode this week. We're going to get really personal this week. But before we jump into it, I want to give a shout out to our patrons. Thank you for supporting us. You can continue to support us and gain the benefits of the different levels of support. Check out all the different benefits because some of them are kind of cool and we're adding more every day. There is a link in the description of this podcast.
I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it.
All right, Jessica, before we get personal, do you have a cocktail of the week for us?
I do. It's called The Dark and Stormy, and I liked that name. I was intrigued because I feel like it's a healthcare worker's shift. It's dark and it's stormy. So that's kind of why I gravitated towards it, and it's actually a pretty easy drink to make. So it is a mixture of 2 ounces of some type of dark rum. Okay, so whatever, if you've got a dark rum, 2 ounces, then 3 to 4 ounces of a ginger beer. Okay, and you're gonna mix those together along with, I didn't have any lime wedges, so I'm having to, probably prettier with that, but I'm having to do lime juice, however much you would like. I mean, that's up to you. And then you're gonna shake it up.
Do you have the fancy
and my
shaker?
shaker isn't here yet.
Oh,
Why
no.
did you get yours?
Yeah,
I don't have my
yesterday.
Nurses Uncorked
Jessica
one.
ordered us fancy Nurses Uncorked shakers.
And then you pour it in your glass, so it's easy. It's just ginger beer, rum, and lime.
How's it
good.
taste?
I like it.
It's
really good. And
Okay.
I'm not a big beer drinker, but it tastes good with the rum. It gives it like a little kick.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I'm
taste
not a
just
beer
like-
drinker, but I do like ginger beer. I love my Moscow mules. So, all right, dark and stormy.
Highly recommend it. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
All right, what are we talking about this?
Yeah, so it's just you and I this week. This is a topic that we have kind of hinted and promised in the past that we're going to talk about, and it's actually you that's going to be talking about it. You went through a very intense surrogacy episode, right? When you were remarried and had a couple of kids with your fancy doctor husband, right? Do you want, and I don't even know the story about this in detail at all. So I'm curious to hear it. I know it was emotional.
What a tale. What a tale. What a tale.
So what happened? Let's start with why. Why did you need a surrogate?
Okay. So when I met my now husband, I had already had 2 children. So from my first marriage. So I had 2 kids already. And while I was still married to my now ex-husband, I was one of those people that got horrible periods, like really bad, cramping, heavy bleeding, where your iron drops, a certain amount, and just a lot of pain. It would last like 8 days, sometimes 9 days. So I qualified to have a uterine ablation. And, at the time I had already had my 2 kids, was still married. I never envisioned I would ever want kids again, So in my late 20s, which in hindsight, it's kind of early to say for sure that you never want kids. But at the time I was like,
you already had 2.
For those that don't know what an ablation is, let's start with that. An ablation basically is where they go in with a laser and they essentially burn the lining of your uterus. So it thins your uterine wall so that you don't have as much shedding when you have your period, because obviously when we have our period, we're shedding our uterine wall every month. Evidently, I had a thick wall, very thick wall, very plush, buoyant uterus, and it shed a lot. So at the time, this was an option. My doctor did tell me, you can't get pregnant anymore after this. Essentially, it's like a deal breaker because even though you have a uterus, there isn't that billowy bed for the embryo to implant in.
Okay.
The bed is fried. But I thought it's a quick in and out procedure. There's really not any downtime from it, and I'm not going to have periods anymore. I was like, sign me up. Like,
right.
win-win, you know?
Sounds great.
I was like, I'm never going to, I have a boy, I have a girl. I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had that done. It worked very well. Just like he said, I mean, for years I had no period.
Okay.
And over that time, and everything else is still the same. Like, you still ovulate, you still go through like you would moodiness when you're getting a period. It's just there's none of the normal shedding that happens. So I was pleased. After several years went by, I did start getting back a little bit of light pink. I know this is a lot of detail, spotting. And they said that could happen. Like, your lining may build up again a little bit. But that years later, combined with, I ended up getting a divorce from my husband and meeting my now husband, who was a young physician, who did not have children yet. And I fell in love with my husband. Early on, I told him, I mean, because I think that's fair early in the dating process, like, hey, I can't get pregnant because of this, you know.
What was his reaction?
To be honest, I remember, like, at the time, it's almost like if I would have said, oh, I'm on birth control pills, like, I can't get pregnant. But we weren't like, it was more seen as like it's an extra safeguard against getting pregnant. Because, I mean, when you're newly when you're newly dating, you're not trying to knock somebody up.
Right.
I didn't realize, I mean, because in the heat of the moment, it's not like he's going to be like, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
I would not, you know. Yeah. So, but yes, he internally, ever since that day, was thinking about it. Like, and as we were dating and falling more in love, in the back of his mind was like, I'm really liking this girl, but I don't see how we could have
and
children
he's an
together.
OBGYN, so I feel like it's kind of implied that he would really want a baby, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
You know?
I knew. We had conversations. He wanted kids, you know. And I think we would hear or there talk about, like, well, I think there's other things you can do, like, you know, IVF. Like, we weren't really even sure of what the extent of it. Well, I wasn't. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew.
He understood.
Knew,
yeah.
I'm not going to carry a baby ever. Like, my uterus no. He knows what an ablation is. And me and my naive mind and my stubborn Cubanness was like, I can overcome anything. I can heal my uterus.
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah. Because it bothered me. I didn't want to let him down, and this could be a deal breaker. You know, I mean,
did he ever say that it was a deal breaker for him?
Yes. Yeah. As we got more and more in love,
that must have been hard.
He broke up with me twice because of it. And it was devastating.
Oh, my God.
Devastating for both of us. Yeah, for both of us, because we both loved each other. Like, it wasn't we were breaking up out of anger. It was just he didn't know how we were going to overcome this hurdle.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, so, you know, he was like, I love you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with our relationship. I just, you know, and I was so stubborn. I'm like, well, let's just go to a fertility doctor. Let's just see what they say. Let's just, you know, like, come, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the midst of all of this, I accidentally got pregnant. So.
You did?
Yes. So I was
was your first, your son was not a result of a surrogacy?
let me
I'm
tell
sorry.
you.
I cut
So
you
when
off.
I got pregnant, I was like, ha ha ha, I told you. I told you I could. We were not married. I was like, I told you I'm Cuban. We're fertile myrtles. Like I was just, he knew. Yeah, I did. I was so proud of me. I'm like, look at me go. Look at me go. My uterus is healing, you know. But in his mind, he knew either A, I was probably going to miscarry, or B, that this would be an extremely high risk, complicated pregnancy because a lot of these pregnancies that happen after an ablation, because the lining is so thin, the placenta oftentimes attaches through the uterus and onto your internal organs. Meaning, and that's what they call like an accreta.
Okay.
When you go to deliver, you can hemorrhage and die, and the mother can bleed to death and die because it is a very complicating vascular thing to have the placenta adhere through the uterine wall and onto your organs. Okay. So his mind, he knew either A, I was going to miscarry, B, it could be that I delivered preterm and we had a preterm baby because that very well could happen, or
Which
C, that he could lose my life from hemorrhaging, blah, blah, blah. But, of course I was like, that's not going to
happen. I have already overcome this. Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, we had gone once. We saw an ultrasound and it had a heartbeat. And then when we went back a week later to check again, there was no heartbeat. So he was right.
I'm sorry.
Miscarriage. Yeah. So I was devastated because I felt like I let him down. Like, I thought I had solved all of our problems.
Right.
I was like, this is meant to be. So, we stayed together for a while, and then the problem came back up again about 6 months later, and he just out of the blue was like, I can't keep, I love you, but I really want to have kids. Like, it was so sad. It really was very saddening. I remember him saying, you're like the love of my life, but maybe down the road I'll get, like he used to say that maybe down the road I'll marry, have a kid, and get divorced, and then you and I could be back together. It was awful. It was really, really
well, and that's really not
sad.
fair to do to someone, because then you hang on to that, right? And you hope for the future. Like, that's just not healthy.
Of course, or it's like one of those things, like you meet your soulmate and you're in love, and then you've got to settle like afterward, like, and maybe be with somebody that's not your number one choice, but you don't have any other options. So, God, we went through this back and forth, and we were separated again for a while, and I was so depressed. I was like, and I'd still have to see him at work all the time, Yeah.
Oh, God,
and then
that
there
must have
was
been
those
hard.
naysayers that were like, I told you he was going to leave you. I told you he was going to.
You had the catty nurses that were jealous and upset that you were dating a doctor there.
In the meantime, I, on my own, had gone to a fertility doctor who...
without him, unbeknownst to him?
I did eventually tell him, and he came to some of the other appointments, but we weren't together. It was so weird. I was like... and of course, the fertility doctor told me you don't have much of a lining. I really don't think that this is gonna work. They could try. There was these weird controversial things where they could shove a balloon in your uterus that you'd keep in there for months. What? And the balloon would try to stretch and break up scar tissue. Like,
oh my God.
I didn't do any of that. Like, but
okay,
the
wait,
chances...
I have a question. Sorry to cut you off, but like, why during all of that, when you're like breaking up and all this, why were you not talking about the possibility of having a surrogate to solve that problem?
Okay. I, of course, had mentioned that. I was like, love can conquer all. Now, you have to keep in mind, my husband is a very, I'm like a dreamer. I'm a big dreamer. That's me. Like, we can make things happen, but he is a very like factual science-based kind of man.
Sure.
And
he's a doctor.
People think he's a doctor and he's loaded, but he was a brand new physician with debt,
Yeah.
with,
student loans.
just making the bare, and surrogacy and hiring a surrogate and all of that is a lot of money. And I can get into all that later if you want, but it is a ridiculous amount of money. So I was bitter because I was like, you don't love me enough to, you don't
have some
love
debt.
me enough to shell out $500,000. Like,
oh my God, is it that much?
Well, it can be, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it ended up, though, that he could not live without me because, I am so wonderful.
I love that.
So
he came to the realization that he could not go on without you, even if it meant
bundle
not
of
having
fun.
kids.
I'm who could not want to be around me,
right?
So we got back together, and he said to me, it was like finally hearing what I was praying for. He was like, "Yeah, we're gonna figure it out. Well, we're gonna wing it. We're gonna figure it out. We'll see what's involved in all of this. Let's just try. Let's just see what happens, And so we went full steam ahead. Like it was like, and he's also the type, once he makes his mind up, that's it. Like he's not going back again. So we decided that we were gonna get married and try to have a baby. Now, God, this is so complex. I also was battling my age. I was already 37 years old.
When you got
I'm already
married?
over. Yeah, when we finally made this decision, like, we're going to do this. We want to have a surrogate, and we would want them to be our children. We want them to be my sperm and your egg.
Can I ask? Okay. And I don't know if this is too personal, but is your husband younger than you?
Yes.
Okay.
He's almost 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
So
that's not much.
I was the cougar.
Roar.
So what he, in his ideal world, would have probably liked to have done, even though he'll never say this, was that we would go ahead and start the process for the surrogacy and then get married down the road. Now, because in his mind, if her eggs are old and dead, because there was a chance of that, and we're not married yet, then technically I still have an out. I know it sounds horrible, and he would never say that, but well, in the state of Florida, you can't go about a surrogacy without being married.
Oh, so, really?
Yes. Okay. So you had to be married first. And
but
he
don't
was
single people get surrogates all the time?
Yes.
But not in Florida.
But if you're doing it with a partner, with another person in the state of Florida, you have to legally be married because it's
okay.
Two people. It's two different. I guess I can think of it as a conflict of interest. I mean, what if you break up in the middle and you start fighting about whose baby it is? Like it brings up all this legal ramifications.
Okay.
So he knew the time was ticking. Every month my eggs were, I know it sounds horrible. You're like 37, that's not that bad, but after 35,
but it is like that's considered a geriatric pregnancy, which is a terrible term, but it is, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm just geriatric. Yeah. So we went down to the courthouse. There was nobody there. It was him and I.
You didn't have a real wedding?
Oh, I did.
Oh, eventually. Okay.
A couple of months later, but we wanted to get going. We wanted to get going on all of this. So we wanted to have the formal. I mean, we did the whole thing. Even though we knew we were going to get married and we were going to have kids, he still did the proposal. He surprised me. He took me to Key West.
Aww.
It was very untraditional, but traditional at the same time. It's the only way I can explain it. We tried to make the best out of it being pre-planned, but yet there's still being surprises, I guess, along the way. So here's what happened. So before we were married, but we hadn't had our wedding. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I went and started the process of trying to do an egg retrieval. Okay. Seeing if I have eggs. Now, the blood tests that they do to see if your eggs are aged or if you have any egg reserve. I forget what the blood test is called, but mine was just at the cusp of like barely having, like it was a little bit over the bottom level.
Okay.
Like if it was 0.5, mine was 0.7. Like it was very low.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh
not
God, like
real promising. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went through the whole thing like they would do for IVF. I had done.
Like injections and stuff.
Injections, egg development, the all the different things that you take to like put your eggs into hyper stimulation, So yeah, I had to do all of that. The same thing an IVF person would do. I'm trying to remember all the drugs. It's like a blur.
Was it hard?
But yeah,
did they have like any weird side effects or anything?
Oh yeah, like emotional. You get very emotional. It's painful. You get very bloated. You look distended and pregnant. You're bruised up everywhere. No, it's not a comfortable process at all. You're doing literally like 4 to 5 shots a day.
Wow.
Then you have to go in for an ultrasound like every day or every other day so they can measure the size of your eggs. Yeah. So it was a huge ordeal. So and some people, they go through all of this and they don't get an egg
no guarantee
to develop. Yeah. So I finally they think that they measured like a total of 7 that had grown out to the right size. So they scheduled me for the egg retrieval.
Okay.
So I went to sleep. When I woke up, they told me they were able to actually get 4 that were decent quality. So it wasn't 7,
good?
It was 4.
It was 7 the goal?
7 was all they measured that was a possibility to retrieve.
Okay. Like, but is there an average number that they take?
Some people, like, you would love to have, like, 20 to 30.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
Because not everyone is going to fertilize the right way.
Right.
Or what if you have a chromosomal abnormality?
Yeah.
Like, so the more eggs you can make, the better your shot is, right?
Yeah.
So we went through the whole, thing. And then, you just had to wait and they would call you within a day or two to tell you if any of them had actually fertilized. And so I think they called me and said all 4 had fertilized.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, that's good.
That's amazing.
Then a day or 2 later, 2 stopped growing. So we were down to 2.
Aww.
Then another day or 2 later, one of them looked good. The other one looked decent too. And we had paid for genetic testing ahead of time. So they go into this tiny little ball of cells and they poke a little needle and then they take it and then
extract
you have to wait.
DNA.
Yeah. So they took that out, froze the 2. And then we waited, and then we finally got the call. We had 1 genetically normal baby. That was it. One.
What was wrong with the other one?
There wasn't enough material to reach a conclusion.
Oh. So
I don't know
nothing, but okay.
It could have been nothing, but there wasn't any concrete evidence that it was a good embryo. So, like they couldn't say.
I have a question. Before you did the egg retrieval, did you guys have conversations about like how many kids you would like? Was that on the table, or was it just like, we'll be happy if we get 1?
It was, I think we always knew that he would like to do it twice. Like he wanted more than 1 kid. He was an only child and hated it. Like he always wished he had a sibling. So it was always that we were gonna do 2.
Okay.
So in the process of this, as I'm doing this whole egg retrieval and all of this, there's another sequence of events going on, and that is, how do you find a surrogate?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
so we're making this baby and we're gonna freeze it.
Do you go to Surrogates
there's a
R
whole-
Us? Like, what do you do?
There's
Surrogates.com? I don't know.
Well, so the IVF clinic or your fertility doctor will give you a list of like agencies that you can call and talk to, and they will introduce you to potential surrogates, right? So we went and had our first meeting, and I could see the look on my husband's face. Just to get in the door, to have them even introduce you, talk to a possible surrogate. This doesn't include their money, legal contracts, attorneys, was $16,000
Wow.
just to introduce you, just to show you a book,
Yeah.
basically,
Wow.
of potential people. And I think my husband about had a heart attack. Okay. He was like, you're gonna make me pay $16,000 just to introduce me to somebody. So, and he was frustrated because it's like, damn, that's a lot of money. Now we're going to take a moment to hear a word from our sponsors. Erica, you know what I was thinking is that sadly, in today's day and age in nursing, with the way things are going, so many nurses often feel like just quitting their job. And that's why I think it's a great idea to have the Vivian Health app on your phone.
Yeah, you could be on a lunch break at work if you're lucky enough to get one and pull up your Vivian Health app and start applying to other jobs. Get out of the toxic jobs and find a place that's good for you.
Yeah, they've got so many options, short-term contracts, long-term, per diem, like there's tons of things. So, hey, I can admit I've done it in the past. I've been frustrated and want to scroll for a job. So you should download the Vivian Health app today. The link is also in the description of this podcast. Erica, I wanted to take a minute to highlight one of our sponsors, Delete Me. I started thinking the other day about, social media has grown so much over the past few years, and day after day it gets bigger and bigger. And that's causing more healthcare workers to get in trouble and get doxxed on their job.
Yeah, if you have a differing opinion, political view, occupation, gender identity, anything, it seems like you're a target these days. So me as an advocate, that's why I've been using Delete Me for so many years now. They help to remove your personal private information from hundreds of online data broker websites. You can go to joindeleteme.com/uncorked for 20% off, or use code uncorked at checkout. There's also a link in the description.
Out of curiosity, Erica, what's one of the worst scents you've ever encountered, like smells, as a nurse?
Ooh, this one time I had a patient finger paint in their poop, and it was bad.
Ooh.
It was on the walls. It was everywhere. And of course, I had to clean it up. Terrible.
Wouldn't it have been nice to have stink bomb odor blocker back then, so you could just quickly dab on a little or a lot?
Yeah, you just put a little bit under your nose. It would have been great. I wish we had these back then. There's so many scents. They have evergreen, lemon, lime, original, pina colada, coffee, lavender, vanilla, and more. My favorite is evergreen.
I love them all. They're offering 15% off with code uncorked15, and you can go to stinkbombodor.com. The link is in the description. Okay, we're back. Should we do our problem of the week before I go into the next half?
Yeah, we can do our problem of the week.
Because how we found the surrogate is a whole nother thing.
Problem of the week.
We had someone write in, and they are very concerned because apparently their unit in the hospital, and I think some other units as well, they've discovered black mold, like in the ceilings. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's
and
bad
that's really bad, really, really dangerous. It's been linked to all manner of health problems, like autoimmune, all sorts of things. It's really dangerous. And they have had to move patients already out of affected areas. So the hospital is well aware, right, that this is happening, but they have not put in any precautions for the employees.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know what you would even do. Like, I'm not an expert in this. Are you supposed to wear an N95, or are you just supposed to not even be in the area altogether? I honestly don't know. So they wrote in to us at Nurses Uncorked wondering, what do we do? Like, we don't even know what our rights are or anything.
Erica will come and remove the mold for you.
No, Erica will not. Because that stuff is scary. That makes me paranoid.
Yes, it is.
It really is.
I had a family member that had this, and they evacuated and went to and stayed at a hotel.
That's what I would do.
Get all this black mold out of their house.
I know someone that almost lost their house because of it, because it took so long. They were fighting with the builder. It was a new house. They had to pay to, like, you know, duplicate expenses and still pay their mortgage and all. Yeah, like, they almost lost their house and it took years. It's terrible. So the first step is you guys have to report it to OSHA, right? Like, immediately. And the more people, the better. If only one person is reporting it, they might not give it credence. But if they suddenly are getting, you know, a dozen reports on every unit from multiple people, like, OSHA's going to pay attention, right? So you guys have got to report it to OSHA first. Then I would research JACO. I'm not positive about this, but I feel like, you know, being a patient safety risk, JACO probably would have some kind of an arm in that, you know? And you can never go wrong with over reporting, right? Like, if you report to an agency and they don't cover it, it's not their jurisdiction, there's no love lost. Nothing is against you for doing that. They simply close the case, right? So I would also report to JACO, and I have all these links on my website on nurseerica.com. I would take pictures of it. If there is something visible, I would get pictures with, like, the date, with some context, like something else in the picture, so you can really tell, like, where it is, you know, video, that kind of stuff.
God forbid something happens to you, or, you know, or you end up really getting sick. You want to be able to prove that.
As always, be creating a paper trail. I would have as many employees as possible sending in emails to create your paper trail to the management, even higher up. Oh, there goes Jessica with her Uncrustable. She can't go one podcast without eating an Uncrustable.
I'm hungry.
We've got to get Uncrustables to sponsor us. Oh. Anyway, paper trail and sending it. I am concerned about my health, my safety, what is being done. Like, get it in writing and print and save all those emails at home. Okay. Always keep in the back of your mind, any retaliation for reporting safety concerns is highly illegal. So you want to be able to prove if they're, you know, that you had reported safety concerns, right? Yep. Start there. And I would keep a journal. If it were me, I would say, like, you know, on this date, they transferred 18 patients out of the unit. If you can get any kind of, like, information where patients may have been affected by it, I would be putting that in my journal. I would be talking to the hospitalist. You know, I had something not really the same, but kind of similar. It was an environmental thing. A hospital where I worked at, they kept using these horrible toxic floor stripping chemicals. And I was affected by it. I had OSHA come in, was the whole thing. But we had patients, being a pediatric unit, that were at the end of their stay. Like, they were scheduled to be discharged that day or the next day. They were weaned off oxygen, whatever. And then they would come in and strip the floors outside the patient's room. And suddenly they would tank and they would be back, you know, on all the oxygen. They would be transferred. You know, this happened again and again and again. Hospitalists were very aware of this. So I would be having those conversations and putting all that in a journal. You know, be cognizant not to use HIPAA, right? But start there. It's scary. Yeah. It's scary. You guys need to band together. I personally would not be working in a unit that I knew had that, or even, like, directly under it, you know?
Or at a minimum, wear an N95.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you're going to be there and subject yourself to that, like, do the best you absolutely can.
And if any employees end up getting any kind of weird symptoms, I would be documenting the hell out of that and going to the doctor, you know? But yeah. Oh, that's also, awful, you know what? The health department, the Department of Health, like, call them too. Report to them in your area.
Call everybody. Call them all.
Yeah.
Right?
Anyway, that's my advice. That's where I would start.
Yeah, because really what I would think is that everybody should be evacuated until they clear it out. I mean, that is what I've always heard.
But you know how hospitals are. They don't want to transfer
they'll
patients
probably
out.
have the nurses. The nurses will probably be scrubbing it with bleach.
Yeah, right? You're not wrong, honestly.
Yeah. They'll be like, well, since there's no patients here, we might as well put y'all to work. Bring some toothbrushes and a bucket and get to work, Cinderella.
Yeah. I could see it, honestly.
Oh, boy. Back to my story. And where did I leave off? Oh, surrogate.
Where did you leave off?
Agencies.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 16,000. Yep.
Yeah. So we were really frustrated. I remember one day I went up to his work and we were sitting in the call room and we were just like, what are we going to do? Oh my God, this is so much money. Like, you know, he's already signing up, taking extra shifts. Like, oh yeah, he was anywhere he could sign. I remember there was 1 month he worked. This is like, I can't believe they even allowed him. He worked like 26 out of 30, 24-hour shifts.
Oh my God.
24-hour
Was he
shifts.
He wasn't a resident? He was out of residency at that point? Or he was still a resident? Wow.
No. He was out of his residency.
No, he was out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, he was signing up left and right for bonus shifts. They have since then, they're a little more strict on doctors doing back-to-back.
Yeah.
As they should be. Because, I mean, luckily, he would get sleep, you know. I mean, it wasn't like women were always delivering all night long, you know. So there were nights he could get sleep, but there were times we barely saw each other unless I went and hung out at the hospital. So anyways, I was like, I don't know. Is there something like surrogacy classifieds? Like, I'm just joking, you know, kind of thinking.
Is there like a Craigslist?
So I literally went to Google and that's what I typed. That's the word that came to me was surrogacy classifieds. And a site popped up that matched potential surrogates with people. It was just, you didn't have to pay for it. It was just a site. So like if somebody wanted to be a surrogate, they'd post like, I'm so-and-so, I live here, I've had this many kids, you know, just like a short little bio and a picture of themselves. Well, one of the first ones that I saw on there was this picture looked beautiful. It was like a silhouette of a pregnant mom. It almost looked like a fake picture. Like I was a little like, that's not real. They probably took it off of Google and put that picture in.
Right.
But she lived only 30 minutes away from us.
Oh, wow.
So we were in, I don't know if you know Florida. Anyway, she was in Dade City. We were in Wesley Chapel. It's really close. And she had just posted this on the site like the prior day.
Wow.
So I was like, well, I messaged her and maybe two others that seemed, you know, she immediately got back to me, you know, especially since we live so close to each other. And before I knew it, we were having a phone conversation. We were on the phone and talking. Come to find out, she's a photographer. She does professional photography, which is why her picture looks so good and looked like a fake. Yeah, and that was actually a silhouette of her pregnant.
Had she done surrogacy before?
No. She had 2 kids already of her own. No complications, nothing. Birth natural, water births in a tub. She actually was about to be a surrogate for her sister who was battling infertility. And then her sister miraculously got pregnant. Like it always happens that way, right?
Yeah.
So she was already in the mindset of doing it, like because she had wanted to do this for her sister. So she was like, I'd like to do this for a family. You know, she's like, I don't want to lie. We could use the money, obviously, but I have easy pregnancies. I, you know, had my 2 kids. And so we talked on the phone for a long time and it almost seemed like too good to be true. I was like, God, this is like, is this possible? Yeah. So we set up like a dinner date. I had them over for dinner.
Did her husband come?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Because that's the other thing you worry about. Like, are they going to be okay with it? Like, she might be, but is he going to be weird about this? Like, they brought their 2 kids with them. So my kids were
normal looking. And
yes, it was just so normal that it was crazy. Like, we just meshed right away. Her husband was so supportive, so nice. Like, great family, like just, but of course there's so much that goes into from here on out. Like, so she's saying, basically, she's like, yeah, I'd like to do this for y'all. So of course my
Wow.
husband chimes in and he's like, well, ideally I'd like to do this twice. Is that something you'd be like? I'm like, good God, can we just get her for the one?
Right. Let's broach that later.
And she actually was like, if things go well and the pregnancy and delivery go good, then yeah, I'd be open to that, So it was just like too good to be true. Like it was crazy. So the whole time while I'm excited, I'm just like, how the hell did we make this happen without having to use an agency?
Yeah, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like there's got to be something that I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Of course. Well, and then I'm thinking we only have one embryo to transfer into her. One. That's it. One. So there's all these moving parts going on. So we get to the point that we've done all the legal stuff. You have to go through psychological screenings. She does. Her husband does. I do. My husband does. You have to go to like there's all these state laws you have to go through. You have to go to counseling sessions to make sure that everybody sits down together and talks about what if she ends up with triplets? What would y'all do?
Right.
What if she ends up in preterm labor? What would y'all do? What if her husband wants it? Like, I mean, the amount of ethical dilemmas they present, because you have to make sure you're all on the same page. Like,
yeah.
Right?
So you had to go out and hire your own attorney.
Yeah, and I had to hire and pay for her attorney. So we had our attorney.
Two separate. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to have two separate attorneys. So, and you have to pay for everything. On top of that, all of her IVF meds, because they want to get her ready for implantation. All the meds that I was on, and none of this is covered by insurance, at least not ours. The transfer day, the surgery day, the sonogram day, the lab work, the medications, like nothing is covered by anything. We were lucky that we did get a professional discount, like because my husband was an OBGYN, the infertility clinic, we got, I think, 25% off of everything, which helped tremendously.
Good.
Yeah. So it cut out a lot of those costs with the doctor, but I mean, not legal fees, and you have to negotiate price with her. And
what about genetic testing with her? Did you have to do anything like that, or no? Because it's your genetics.
She did have to like go through. They run all those other labs. Like, do they carry certain?
Right.
It's so hard. And I will say, anybody that's interested in hearing the specifics of this story, we'll link my YouTube videos in the description, because me and my husband taped our story many years ago so we wouldn't forget. So you guys have to remember, a lot of this is not the freshest in my mind, but those two videos are spot on accurate. We did it so we wouldn't forget.
Right. That's good.
Later on. So I apologize if the sequence is a little bit, but if you want like a actual sequential thing, I have a 2-part video thing about it. Because she was a photographer, it felt right to hire her to do our photos at our wedding, right?
Oh my God.
Wait. Yeah.
Wow.
Wait. No, it gets
That's
crazier.
crazy.
So she's our wedding photographer, and the way the timing worked out,
but she wasn't pregnant yet?
Her transfer was somewhere around 2 weeks before my wedding. And we were able to find out if it took 2 days before the actual wedding. So we had this dilemma. Do we want, it could ruin our wedding. Do we want to hear bad news if it didn't take? Like, or do we wait? And the IVF place was fine with that. Like, we can wait and tell you the results after your wedding. It doesn't, we can wait, obviously they could let Kaylee know, yes, you were pregnant and you are pregnant, but she wouldn't tell us. Like, it was kind of left up to us. Well, my husband wanted to wait. Okay. I had other plans. I couldn't stand it. And my surrogate couldn't
I
stand
wouldn't
it.
have been able to either.
So her and I were talking on the phone, and she's like, hypothetically, if I had taken a pregnancy test and I did know results, and it was good results, would you want to know or would you not want to know? And I was like, Kaylee, did you pee on a stick? And she's like, yeah, I've taken like 10, and it's like so positive. So I was like so ecstatic, but then I was like, shit, I want to tell my husband. He's going to be thrilled, but at the same time,
Right.
I didn't want him to be like, why'd you do that? What if it was bad? But anyway, so yes, she was at our wedding as our photographer, and she was
Wow.
pregnant, very early
That's
pregnant.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was amazing. I mean, it was the greatest news ever. Like, so we, on our wedding day, I mean, remember we were married, but this was the wedding.
Right.
And we didn't tell everybody all those details back then because I didn't think it was anybody's business that we had to go to the courthouse and all of that. But what we did was we had like this sand art where like my husband poured in one color sand. I poured in one color of sand. My older two kids poured in their colors of sand. And then we sprinkled in sparkles for the baby into the sand mixture. So there was like different colors for everybody. Yeah. You know how like some people will do a unity candle?
Yeah.
This was kind of like our unity sand. It was a beach wedding. So, but again, you know, we were obviously a nervous wreck I was the whole pregnancy because you just don't want anything to go wrong. And,
especially like the first trimester, did you feel a little better after the first trimester?
After that, yeah, each thing is a milestone, you know, you're like, we made it to 12 weeks. Like, you know, at first we didn't want to tell people until she had made it to 12 weeks. But of course, you know, you start, you know, telling family a little bit earlier than that because you're so excited. Yeah. But we did not find out what the baby was. Like we didn't want to know. We wanted it to be a surprise. So we didn't find out till the day she delivered that it was a boy.
You didn't want to know?
So we had, I did badly. But my husband, he's like, I really want this to be a surprise. Like, because everything was so planned.
True.
Like, and meticulous and scientific. And it was like, and I understood. He was like, can we just have one thing that's like, a surprise, one thing, you know, because everything was down to such perfect timing. So what was really cool is that the OBGYN that delivered Kaylee let my husband do the delivery because he's an OBGYN. So
you don't think that's a little weird? Is that not like a conflict of interest or something? I don't know.
It would be a conflict of interest to be her provider and have to make decisions. But literally, like her OB got my husband to the point that the head was crowning. It was obviously coming out with ease, and she was there the whole time.
Okay.
So basically, he just did the final delivery.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't, but no, that would have been a conflict of interest because you can't separate yourself.
Right.
I don't care who says that they can mentally separate yourself. You can't.
That must have been emotional for him, for all of you.
Oh my, the video, I have a clip of it on the YouTube video of the delivery.
You were in the
obviously
room,
you can't see any.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the room. His mom, my sisters. Like her husband was there. He did the photography. He took pictures, like professional pictures.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, I cried so hard when that baby came out. I did the ugly cry. It was like, I was hyperventilating, and you know, they immediately give me the baby because it's my baby.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, it's not Kaylee's. And, you know, I want to explain again, because some people get very confused. This is genetically my child. It's my egg, my husband's sperm. We just needed a house. We needed a cooker. That's how I explain it to my kids. an oven. So 6 months later, we did it all over again. But this time,
only 6
I
months
ended
later?
Yep. That's all they made her wait was 6 months. And they said that safely she could as soon as 6 months. And we were like, let's do it. Like,
okay.
Why not? And she
And
wanted
there was no
to. She's like,
hesitation on her part to do it again.
No. She's like, I'm ready. Like, let's do this.
So wait, did you have to go through all of the egg retrieval again? Everything?
Yep.
All the injections, all that stuff.
Because I only had that one. Had I had a bunch, I wouldn't have. But so this time I ended up with 5 genetically normal embryos.
Wow.
5.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I had 5. So
did you ever consider having a third? Was that ever on the table?
We were happy. Like, so we, of course, to the doctor, we were like, can we now know the genders of these now? Because we would like a girl. Like, if one of them is a girl. But the place I went to, they don't like to share that information. They won't. They put in the best quality embryo. So they pick the one that's graded the best.
That makes good. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are fertility places that will let you choose the gender, but the one I went to was not one.
Okay.
But we ended up with a little girl. We went through the whole thing all over again, and we were not surprised that
gender?
time. Yeah, we found out. Yeah, we found out early. Yeah. And I got that because I told my husband, if you let me find out this time, you can name the baby. I'll let you name the kid whatever you want. I was like, I just wanted to know so
I
bad.
could not give that up.
He picked Denali, and I liked it. I was like, I think that's beautiful. And then her middle name, Elisa, is after my grandmother. So I was happy with the name, and we got to find out that he announced what the gender was at an ultrasound. He can read ultrasound, so the text scanning and she's like, "Can you tell what it is?" And he's like, "Oh my God." He's like, we're going to be in trouble. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We're going to be financially in trouble." And I was like, and then he told us it was a girl. We were all like, oh my God. I was like, how could we be so lucky? So, I guess, and that delivery smooth. I mean, she was like a miracle, an angel sent from God, this surrogate. I could not have been more blessed and more lucky. I do. We keep in touch. She lives up north now, so she's not in Florida anymore. But for the longest time, while she was in Florida, we still got together and so she could see the kids and hold them. And I've told my kids since they were little their story. I've got books that's about the kangaroo pouch, and it teaches them how they got here. That it was a little different, but it's still mommy and daddy, and it's there's just another kangaroo that carries, because one kangaroo so they've got kids books for that, and I've always explained it to them. I don't ever want them to be surprised by that or taken aback or something. But we ended up with 2 perfectly normal.
Wow.
So I guess the reason I was willing to do this podcast was because I want people to understand that even though you feel like, if you're facing infertility and you feel like there's a million things against you and everything is up against the wall and you feel defeated, you're never going to have a baby, there's always hope. You can always try. There's so many different things, so many different ways, just don't give up on yourself. Even if, let's say I didn't end up with my own eggs, we could have used a donor egg. Like there's a million different avenues.
Did you guys talk about that? Would you have?
I really, really, it would have broken my heart.
Yeah.
I think I would have.
For your husband.
But I think it would have, I would have, but it would have devastated me. And I know you can pick a donor that has similar characteristics to you, and I get that.
Still.
But in my heart, like I really, really, really wanted, and luckily I didn't have to make that decision or get to that point. But then we got to the point that we had 4 perfectly genetically normal embryos sitting in the lab.
Oh yeah. So what?
And they're like, "What are you gonna do with these?"
Right.
You can donate them to science. You can have them discarded. You can donate them to families that can't get pregnant. So what we ended up doing was we made the decision we wanted to do what's called an open donation, where we could know about the child, like if they did get pregnant, and just be able to like follow along and get updates.
Yeah.
But nobody was picking our embryos based on that because nobody wanted an open donation. So after about a year of nobody picking them, we switched it to a closed donation. So I may have a baby out there. It's not my baby, it'd be somebody else's baby, but I wanted to give that to somebody else that needed and wanted to have a baby and couldn't. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine.
Really nice.
And everybody's different. I don't judge. Some people can't come to terms with that, like that they could have a baby out there. But I know all the heartache I went through, and I feel like it was going to get me teary. I feel like if I could give somebody that gift, and how could I, after seeing my 2 babies and how amazing they are, I'm like, how could I not give these 4 perfect lives, not the ability, the option to possibly exist in this world? Like, even if it didn't take, at least I tried and I gave them. So who knows, maybe with all this genetic testing and stuff that goes on nowadays, maybe somebody will. I'm in the data bank, so maybe somebody will find me. I know. Just that's
She's getting all emotional. Of course. Yeah, I can't imagine
but it's a great
going
story.
through something like that. I, was blessed to get pregnant very easily. We decided to have a second one, and it happened like a month later.
That's how I was.
I mean,
my first 2 were just like that. And I would say the other thing is, if you say to yourself, I'm never going to want kids again, just think about it, because you never know what life is going to throw your way. Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen. I would have never dreamed that I'd be divorced and in love with somebody that didn't have kids. Like if I could have taken, that was the one thing that if I could have taken that back, I would have in a heartbeat. Like, because I was just like you. I'd get pregnant basically on month 1. Like I never had a problem, like at all. It was just like if I was going to get pregnant, I was going to get pregnant. So yeah, I went from one extreme to the other. But
so what did it end up costing, if you're comfortable sharing that?
Okay, so God.
And what would it have been had you gone with the agency? Do you know, like all told, what it would have been?
I know. Okay, so let me compare. Had we not gotten the 25% discount as a, professional courtesy discount, had we not found our own surrogate, this can cost upwards of probably $250,000, $300,000
for one.
But now you have to remember, sometimes these embryos don't take, and you have to do this multiple times with your surrogate. And sometimes they're hospitalized, and you have to pay out of pocket.
Oh gosh,
all their hospital stay. If they're in preterm labor, you have to pay their salary. You have to pay, because if they're out of work and can't work, like there's all these things in the contract. So, it technically, in worst case, could cost you $500,000. Yeah. So I believe, each surrogacy probably was around a total of about 100,000. I would say.
Okay.
And that's that we got out lucky. Like we were, but
no
that's a lot of money.
It is.
It is a lot of money, to write. Oh, the second time, because we had already had an attorney draw up the papers, and that's a whole nother fee. For the second time, my husband drew up his own papers.
Oh my gosh.
And then we hired an attorney to just review it. Like, because basically we were all going to do the same terms. Like, it wasn't like the first go around. So I think we saved like another $10,000 on the second one by just basically updating a couple little things here and there, but we didn't have to have an attorney draw up everything from the very beginning.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot of money, and I'm thankful that my husband has a job that he could work nonstop
Mm-hmm.
and pick up shifts to basically pay it off. But it was tough. It was tough, but I'm very, very blessed. Somebody was watching over me.
And your kids are
And
beautiful.
made it happen.
They're so cute.
Thank you.
And
I think I'll keep them.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody wants to know, my son is 8 years old now. Koa is his name, and then my daughter is Denali. She's 7, and they are amazing. My son is a spitting image of my husband,
Mm-hmm.
like
I was going to say they look just like you guys. Yeah.
My daughter is a good mix of the two of us, but she is my personality to a T. She is sassy. She is
oh Lord, look out!
Loud. She is me. Like completely I'm like, that child's got to have more of my genetic material.
Thing. My daughter is me too, personality, like everything. And we are constantly discovering new things, like her as a young adult, where she'll say something and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the exact same way. And she, every time she rolls her eyes, she's like, oh my God, again.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny
what a
how
love story you guys have had from beginning to end.
I ought to, speaking of books, I ought to write a book about that. Like, it's just such a crazy story. It's just like every hurdle, we finally just overcame it and conquered it. Like, but you've got to have a partner that is willing to 1000% go in it with you, you know? And I think, you know, for anyone listening to the podcast that might think, God, that was kind of judgy of him to not marry you. Like, you have to understand it. Yeah. And until he could make his mind up, I wouldn't want him to marry me and have animosity
and give that up.
Yeah. Or him never have kids and in the back of his mind always hold a resentment or something. Like, he had to come to that conclusion on his own. He had to get to those terms on his own time. And, you know, and his side of this, the whole surrogacy is on the YouTube as well, because we're both on the video. So you can hear from his perspective and his viewpoint. You know,
did you ever consider adoption early on before you found the surrogate? Would you have done that?
Nothing was off the table. Nothing was off the table. I think the second thing would have been, you know, it being half his genetic and a donor. Yeah. And then I think adoption would have been our last. So no, nothing was off the table for sure. But I'm just lucky it worked out the way it did. So do we have an enema?
That's such a good story. Yes, we do. All right. Allegedly, Phoenix Children's Hospital has recently implemented something that's not new. Nurses everywhere are going to be familiar with this, but they are now insisting that nurses and employees refer to the pediatric patients as customers or clients, right? This has been going on for years. I've seen it myself in pediatrics, but it does just sort of seem extra wrong and egregious in a pediatric unit, because, you know, these are patients that do not have a voice, right? They cannot even speak for themselves in many cases. To call them, instead of a patient or a pediatric patient, the child, whatever, to force staff to constantly refer to them as the client or the customer, it just seems extra wrong in a pediatric setting. And
that
allegedly,
sounds so formal and stiff.
It does. It does. Yeah. And allegedly at Phoenix Children's, they have recently implemented this and are enforcing that, despite, I don't
like that,
people, you know, staff saying that we don't like this. This really isn't appropriate, you know. So this week's Enema Award goes to, allegedly, Phoenix Children's Hospital.
Yeah,
and really to every other management hospital out there that has forced nurses anywhere to call patients anything other than patients. The whole customer service mentality of nursing and healthcare is really, truly, in my opinion, one of the major downfalls of the entire medical profession since we started that philosophy.
I agree with you. I mean, of course we want to please our patients. Like, that goes without saying. Like, we want them to be happy, but this is not the same.
Customer service oriented.
This is not the same as like a restaurant,
to them.
like, or you know what I mean, or like we're not like doing somebody's hair, like,
right?
It just
because you cannot come from a place of the customer is always right. You cannot do that in healthcare, but they force us to do that. Well, the bottom line is that the patient is not medical. They do not know. They do not have the education. So they cannot be right all the time. Like, they are inherently going to be wrong sometimes.
Right.
So Anyway.
Alrighty. Well, they enjoy. Hopefully they reconsider that and kind of change that. I mean, it's one thing to do it for the adult part of it, in the hospital, but these little kids don't want to hear that. Client.
No.
I mean, geez.
No. And even the parent, would you want to hear your 3-month-old infant that's hospitalized referred to as the customer? That's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. All right. Well, I got a little teary-eyed today and got that out of the way.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, you're welcome. I mean, I could have talked for 4 hours, but there's so many tiny details of the story, but we got to limit this down, and I think everybody got the gist of it. Thank you for letting me share it. No, it was really, really cool. Maybe one day Erica will share a personal story. We'll wait and see.
I know. I always say that I'll talk about the year I turned 40, and because it was the most traumatic year for me, and all these things happened. Yeah. Maybe one day I'll share that. Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, we're here.
Okay.
All right. Until next time on the next Nurses Uncorked.